Every few decades, the world's financial system resets itself. Currencies collapse, debt vanishes, and new rules, written in secret, decide who will rise and who will be left in ruins. But what if these resets aren't accidents of history? What if they're planned? An invisible playbook written by those who control money itself, quietly rebooting the system whenever it starts to expose its own lies. This is the hidden story behind the world's financial resets. To understand the modern reset, we need to go back to when money stopped being real. In 1694, the Bank of England was created not to store wealth, but to create it out of thin air. It lent money to the king in exchange for interest, backed not by gold, but by future taxes from the people. This was the birth of debt-based money, a brilliant invention disguised as progress. It allowed governments to wage wars they couldn't afford, and bankers to profit from every bullet fired. From that moment on, money was no longer a measure of value. It became a tool of control. For centuries, gold kept money honest. It was finite, tangible, unforgiving. But the bankers hated it, because gold couldn't be manipulated. Then came the Great Depression. Governments claimed that speculators were hoarding gold. The real reason, they wanted to print their way out of debt. In 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt made gold ownership illegal for Americans. Citizens were forced to turn in their gold for paper dollars. That was the first modern financial reset. A quiet coup that replaced hard value with promises and handed total control to the issuers of currency. After World War II, the world needed order. The solution was born at Bretton Woods, where 44 nations agreed to a new system. The US dollar, being Nixon backed by gold, would become the world's reserve currency. Every nation's money would now depend on the dollar, and the dollar would depend on the gold in Fort Knox. But this system carried a secret flaw. America could print dollars faster than it mined gold. And by the 1960s, other nations started to notice. When New France demanded its gold back in 1971, President Richard Nixon faced a choice: lose America's gold or break the promise. He chose to break it. On August 15, 1971, Nixon announced the end of the gold standard. Just like that, the link between money and reality was severed. That was the second great reset, the day money became purely political. Once money was free from gold, the printing never stopped. The 1980s unleashed a new religion: growth at any cost. Credit cards, corporate leverage, and global debt exploded. The financial world was no longer about productivity, it was about perpetual borrowing. But infinite debt requires infinite belief, so central banks began their true mission: to manipulate confidence itself. Interest rates became the strings that moved the global puppet show. Every crisis, every recession was solved by creating more debt. When debt itself became the product, a reset was inevitable. In 2008, the illusion cracked. The financial system, built on mortgages, derivatives, and lies, collapsed under its own weight. But instead of resetting to truth, the world doubled down on deception. Trillions of dollars were printed out of thin air to save the same institutions that caused the disaster. The people lost their homes, the banks got bonuses, and for the first time the public began to sense the pattern. Every crisis becomes an excuse for more control. Every collapse leads to a bigger solution engineered by the same players who caused it. Now the next reset is already underway. It's called the CBDCs, Central Bank Digital Currency. It promises convenience, but behind the glossy slogans lies a silent transformation. Every transaction, every dollar, every citizen, tracked, analyzed, and controlled. Physical cash vanishes, privacy disappears, and once all money exists on a government ledger, freedom becomes conditional. History shows that resets always begin with promises of safety and end with systems of surveillance. The pattern never changes, only the technology does. In 1944, it was the Bretton Woods Agreement. In 1971, it was the Nixon shock. In 2008, it was quantitative easing. In 2020, it was stimulus and lockdown economics. Each reset redefined value, centralized power, and deepened dependency. Today, global debt exceeds 315 trillion, more than 3 times the entire world's GDP. Every major economy is technically insolvent, and yet markets keep rising because money is now belief, not value. That belief is the only thing left to reset. Every reset needs a designer, and the fingerprints point to the same institutions: the IMF, the World Bank, and the Bank for International Settlements. The central bank of central banks. These are not conspiracies. They're self-proclaimed architects of reform. But their reforms always lead to one outcome: less autonomy for nations and more control for creditors. Behind the curtain, the names change, but the agenda remains. Rebuild the system, keep the public in debt, and ensure that power flows upward. From centuries of resets, 3 truths emerge. First, every financial system is designed to fail, on schedule. The collapse is not the end, it's the restart button. Second, debt is the real currency of control. As long as you owe, you obey. And third, the only real monies is the kind that can't be created at will. Gold once served that role. Now, some believe decentralized assets could inherit it. But remember, every new system starts with a promise and ends with a price. The next reset won't be announced. It'll simply happen. One morning, your balance may look the same, but your freedom will be worth far less. The story of money has always been the story of control, and those who understand it early don't just survive resets, they profit from them. So study the past, question the promises, and never forget, when the world's financial system resets again, what will you own that still has value when the code is rewritten? This is not the end of money, it's just the next chapter of its control. Stay awake, stay informed, subscribe for more hidden truths,